Well, something completely different in the workshop today. I'm going to be working with plastics. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be building this little stand to house my engraver. And the reason I want to do that is because now I can put my laptop on top instead of having it on from side to side and taking up a much larger footprint. So stick around and see how it is working with plastics. So to get started, the basics of working with plastic, you can use a miter saw or a sliding miter saw, you can use a table saw, and there are special blades if you want to, if you're going to be using them a lot, you might want to get special blades. For all of the plastic that I cut, I just use a 60 tooth on my table saw, and I already have an 80 tooth installed on my sliding miter, and it works just fine. So an 80 tooth, a 60 tooth woodworking blades, and I'm using the Freud brand, by the way. It's a thin curve. They seem to work just fine. They're a tiny bit rough on the edges, but for what we're working with, they work just fine. If you're going to be bonding plastic, you're going to need something called methylene chloride. And there's a warning on the package that says, don't breathe these fumes in for long periods. And they're also quite flammable, so you want to keep them away from any open flame. The other thing is this stuff evaporates like crazy. So when you are using it, the last time I bought it, it came in a can, and I thought that I had put the lid on really tightly, but apparently it wasn't tight enough, and when I went to use it the next time, it was all gone. It literally evaporated. So the second time I bought a can, I put it in this glass bottle, and I have the lid on it quite firmly tightened, and it's lasted me a number of years now. We're going to do a quick bonding of this, but I want to show you basically the way this works is we take this out and we use this little applicator, and you'll notice that it's got a long needle here, and that's so that you can get into tight corners. So I'm just going to pour a very tiny bit of, we don't need it very much, into this little bottle. That's more than enough, and we'll put the lid on that. And then we'll do a quick bonding just to show you how quick and easy this is. I've just cut a couple of pieces of plastic, and we're just going to quickly glue them together so that you can see close up of what this looks like. So I'm just holding this vertically, and hopefully it's not going to slide around too much, but it'll bond pretty quickly. And now all I do is take my fluid and just run it, and you can actually see, even on there, how it's running along the bottom of that. And I'm just going to hold that for a second, and hopefully I don't move it, and it'll bond there quick enough that you'll get to see just how quick this actually bonds. I should be able to take my finger off, and that's it. That's bonded on there. Now, it's not super strong right now. It'll take a little while, maybe an hour or so to get strong, but, it's right now, it's strong enough that it's holding itself just with me moving around, unlike wood glue, which, of course, would fall off right now. But that gives you an idea when you're working with plastics just how quick it is to do something like that. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of bonding today. We're going to start off by cutting this so that the height will be here, and it'll just be barely above the top of my engraver here. And because we're going to be using this on end, and it's going to be open at the bottom, you'll see that, well, you've seen that. I'm not going to be able to glue the top on because I don't trust it to be able to hold the area strong enough. So what I'm going to do in this case today, I'm going to use this, and I'm actually going to use some wood because it'll give me a stronger angle, so that, because it's going to be like this, and there's just a little bit of a thin area to be gluing and hope that it'll hold. So I'm going to use something a little bit thicker. I'm going to use some wood in there, and that means we're going to have to drill holes. But what I am going to do is glue the feet, so that the feet that will hold this up eventually, because it's going to be open at the bottom, they'll actually be glued using our gluing process or our bonding process, whatever it's called. If you're purchasing new plastic, it almost always comes with a paper coating on both sides of it, and it's very easy to mark. The material that I'm using is offcuts from a manufacturer that makes skylights, so the plaster, the paper is already off, and it's very hard to mark. So what I do is just put some blue tape on there, and I can mark the tape, and now I can very accurately set my blade to where I need to cut. This material that comes off, I guess it's really during the melting process, is very common. You will get that on almost everything that you cut. And you can just simply break it off with your fingers, and you'll notice that you'll even have a little bit on the back side, and there is on this one too. The other thing that I like to do is, to get a nice smooth edge, is I'll take a file and just run a couple of lines down each side, and that way, I'll take my tape off here now too, and that way we make sure that we're getting a nice clean process. Now the other thing that I like to do, and you can't really tell by looking at it, but even though it's a nice clean cut there, I still like to run a file back and forth there, because if you're gluing plastic to plastic, it needs to be absolutely flat. So for cutting plastic on the table saw, I've installed my 60 tooth blade. I've set up everything. I find that the tooth height on this is about the same as wood, but a little bit higher. In this case, we probably want to go maybe a full tooth, or even a little bit more, maybe well, it's a little more than 1/4 of an inch, and I find that gives the best cut, at least with this blade that I'm using here. So let's go ahead and make that cut. There's what my two sides look like, and they're just being held up temporarily for now. But there's the top that we just cut on the table saw, and you can see that it's a little bit short. And because I'm working with recycled material, trying to be environmentally friendly and all that good stuff, it's easy for me to do, because instead of making sort of a square piece of wood in here, I can make it a little bit wider so that the top will fit on there. I think this has been an hour since we made this, and I just thought for fun we'll see how much strength it takes to break that off of there. Ooh, there, that shows you just how strong it really is. Now the next thing I want to do is to glue these feet on, and I've cut some little wedges here so that I can use them as braces. So I'm just going to set that up. Now I'm just going to run a bead along there, get that to the end, and I'll put one of my uprights there so that we get it nice and square. There, and if I just hold that for a moment, that should lock on there. So the wood that we're going to use to secure the top, we need to drill some holes through, and I'm using these screws with a very wide head so that we get a nice broad area of contact. Now when you're drilling plastic, I always find it's best to do just a little bit of a starter for the drill, and you don't need much, just a little bit of a whack like that. And there are special drill bits. I don't have them because I'd need to buy a whole set of them, but I find if you go the right speed with just ordinary wood bits, it works just fine. And after you've done it for a while, you'll figure out what the right speed is. All right, all the holes are drilled now. I'm going to start attaching the wood. These screws are a little more than what I need, but it's all I have on hand at the moment, and it'll work just fine. Now remember, this plastic on the top is going to hang over a little bit, or be a little short, I guess I should say. So what I'm using is just this 3/4 inch piece of wood just to figure out so that I get a nice even depth on the top here. And I've got a clamp on the other side because it's still loose on the other side, and I'll just attach this one first of all. Well, now we have the big moment of truth. Is this all going to work out? Well, let's see it. Let's see how it's going to look here. Not quite sure how to do this. Yeah, it looks like everything fits in. Well, and that concludes my video on working with plastics. And they really are easy to work with. They're clean and quick and easy to use, especially with that solvent. And I know this isn't going to win any blue ribbons at the state fair, but you know what? It's got a much smaller footprint than it had before, because now I can put my laptop on top and it just takes up less space. So for me, it's perfect, exactly what I want. And I'm environmentally friendly because I got to use some materials that otherwise might have got thrown out or discarded somewhere. So don't forget, if you haven't already subscribed, we ask you to do that. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. Don't forget, I've got an Instagram account now too, so you can follow me there, and I'm starting to get on to using that. I'm Colin Gannett for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.